Splitstone Quarry is the new map coming to OB55, the next patch for Paladins. And I've just got to put it out there, this map looks incredible, and the art team have really outdone themselves. It's set in a gold mine in the centre of a big crater, and around it is a goblin-like village or lots of sets of goblin buildings. The lighting, the locale, and the little bits and hints here and there are what really makes this map special. The map is fun too to play, feels a great length, there's lots of flank routes, there's lots of levels in the map, and it feels like it has been an accumulation of a lot of their level design coming up to this point and developing over the open beta and looking back at the test maps. But today what I'm mainly talking about is what this brings to the realm in the terms of world building and lore, and specifically in Ruckus, who this map is based around. So thanks to Corgily, one of my Discord users, for going around on the map with me. And what I basically did was just go around with a fine tooth comb and try and look for all the details, all the Easter eggs, and piece together what story I could find. But first let's just talk about what the devs said on the patch stream. The first thing hi-rez said was they were maybe not there by choice, which gives the idea of them being slaves or overworked. And in fantasy games, films, and pretty much most media that depict goblins in a fantasy setting sort of set them as a lesser orc and kind of the bitches of the fantasy realm of evil people. So they're always like underlings of orcs or things like that. There's lots of things pointing to that in this map as well, with an obvious lack of safety, even if there are little warning signs on the wall. And one of the biggest things that sticks out is the fact that there's so many open hazards on this map, so it doesn't suggest that the goblins are very much cared for. The devs also mentioned it could include some of the other champions and maybe have something to do with Barrack. Why is this interesting? Well, on the map there are quite a few posters and a few warning symbols, and actually if you look at the warning symbols compared to the posters, the languages do look a little bit different. I was wondering whether perhaps there was some elven language going on, but at least on Torvald's art cards, the languages on his runes and on the scripts that he is looking at in the card art don't really match up with the languages in either the charts or the warnings here. And unfortunately there isn't anything for Barrack, so I really don't know what the Dwarven language looks like, so it could be Dwarven, and perhaps the warnings were in Goblin speak, because it almost looked like the goblins had designed the warnings themselves. They're almost comical and humorous, like the one saying don't go near the fidget spinners of doom, other ones happier going up an elevator, and some like don't jump into that fire otherwise you're gonna die pretty much, but in a funny way. It's got almost a very simplistic goblin humour to it, although there's one where there's 3 goblins and one wearing a crown in a minecart of gold seeming like they have a good time, which also looks a bit like propaganda for those gobbos. But the languages on the calendars and the walls and the designs look different and maybe a little bit more sophisticated than the language on the warnings, and I think you can probably actually work out what the maps say, but I couldn't work it out myself. I was trying to rack my brain on what the 6-letter word was, like the 2nd and the 5th letter were the same. It was on the boring fidget spinner looking machine, and I was looking at boring, tunneling. I don't really know what you call it. Like I was thinking about drilling, but it's not 6 letters, so it could just be some gobbledygook as well. The other thing the developer said was that Bolt has his own personality, and roughly what happened was there was some sort of trap when they used the crystal, and the spirit of another character in the realm entered the crystal and became Bolt the mech. Now Holt said that he didn't want to spoil anything, but I've been through quite in detail looking around this map, and I couldn't find explicitly anything that showed what happened to Ruckus, what exactly happened to all the people in this map, and it's kind of a bit of speculation. So what do I think happened, and what am I speculating at the moment in this Splitstone Quarry? Well, if you go around the map, there seems to be a lot of cave-ins, there seems to be a lot of mechs that were the predecessors to Bolt and looked like Ruckus has created his own sort of mech to fight with, but they're all sort of strewn around the map. There are some propped up against the walls that aren't near any cave-ins or anything, and they've had their tools removed, like their claws and their drills, and are pretty much disassembled, so it looks almost like they've been in a fight or that they've been disarmed after something's gone on. Although there's some tragic scenes where there's flowers laid at the sort of grave two of the mechs. One's trying to like reach down to the other one, almost looking like it's going to try and save him. And I think that might be to do with the story here, and that there's a working table, and if you look at the table, there's also a bunch of flowers there, and they've got candles, and the candles were there as well, like almost like a vigil for the people that have died. So perhaps the conditions got so bad in this quarry that it led to some form of rebellion. And also on the table where these flowers are, there's a chisel type thing stabbed into one of the designs of one of the contraptions. There's three, I think there's two lift type things, and one of them's that boring machine. Now what's stabbed is one of the lift machines, so perhaps they were planning on hijacking the lift and getting out of there. Or maybe it's just symbolizing the escape of perhaps Ruckus doing this himself. Maybe Ruckus was the one that stabbed that map and decided enough's enough and breaking out, maybe inciting the rebellion that happened, and maybe why this map is in such disrepair. The other thing that kind of suggests something along these lines, or something happened, there's some incident, is there's a calendar on the wall. Now the first thing you see actually is a goblin riding a unicorn with a Valkyrie, like a opera singer lady that I guess is sexy to the goblins, and the goblins licking her bosom. Well, that's what it seems like on the picture anyway. But below that picture, obviously what the goblins want to see, there's a chart with crosses and dashes. Now what the dashes mean, did they actually go in that day? Did they maybe not take a mech out? Maybe the crosses are when they take their mech out. But there's a section of the calendar where nothing basically happens after it, but they put a kind of sad looking face there. So perhaps after that point there was the revolt or something happened, and that's what that is representing. The only thing is there's no goblin bodies around strewn all over the place, so maybe it's been cleaned out since then. What is interesting about the idea of Bolt and how he's powered, they say that a soul got trapped in the crystal, but if you actually look in the map where the mechs are, there's like a little area where they were normally stored before they took them out, with all the attachments in a cupboard. And there's one cupboard as well that's got a lock on it, a padlock, and there's crystals inside there. It looks different from all of the gold that they're mining from the tunnels, because the gold is outside and you can see it, and it's not glowing like these crystals are inside this cabinet. It looks like these crystals were what were used to power up the mechs. That's another thing as well. Not only were the mechs disassembled outside of this little containment area, but their crystals were taken out as well. So perhaps the mechs were taken care of, or these exosuits, or whatever you want to call them, and the crystals taken back and sealed away again. Coming back to the idea of Barak being involved, are the designs dwarven? Is it a dwarven controlled mine and they're exploiting the goblins? It's a bit of a stretch, but one thing that's interesting is that Barak's crystals, like Ruckus, are a sort of yellowish colour, and they look very similar to those crystals that are in that cabinet, and the Ruckus crystal itself looks like the ones in the cabinet too. So could the crystals be partly being mined here as well out of these gold mines? Maybe they find them a bit rarely, maybe Ruckus found one and didn't hand it back in again, or maybe smuggled one out, kept it and put it into his mech, and maybe there was a spell on it and that's what the trap was, to pull somebody else's soul into it. It's a bit up in the air at the moment. There are little hints here and there what Ruckus was built out of, or at least his mech, in that on the top of the boring machine there's sort of a pointy metal bit with the mouth sort of figure on top of it, and that looks quite different to what's actually on Ruckus mech. So maybe the crystal itself brought the mech to life and made it more lifelike, like the mouth is moving, almost looks like it's some sort of demon itself. But what I haven't completely got from this map is a consistent story or backstory for Ruckus and what exactly happened in these mines. It's all just sort of hints. And again, it's not exactly a bad thing. It's great that there's some more world building and some more theme maps that are related to champions. And honestly, this map looks amazing. It plays very well. It's got environmental hazards with a lava sort of flow waterfall thing and the fidget spinners of doom. And the environmental art around the pits that the mines exist in is pretty beautiful, these sort of buildings all around it, and sort of give the vibe that this place would be very hard to escape from, or is quite oppressing because you're living at the bottom of a pit basically. Anyway, does anybody else have any theories about the writing on the designs? Some of the symbols actually do match up to the calendar symbols, the days, but then that sort of throws out whether or not there's a word on the designs, or maybe they're just scheduling for the completion. I'm not really sure there. Has anyone else cracked the code? What are everybody else's thoughts on the map and Ruckus and Bolt's backstory. Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. If you thought this video was lore-tastic, be sure to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of my content. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Until next time, everybody, Joshino.